So how does this thing work? This thing being personal relationships. Good question for somebody with Asperger syndrome because quite frankly, we don't know. We don't have the answer. We have this thing called mind blindness. You're aware of that if you have studied autism or Asperger syndrome, or if you've listened to my videos. You know that mind blindness is a key. Maybe it is the cornerstone of Asperger syndrome. Mind blindness simply means that we don't get how neurotypical people think socially. We just don't get it. It's as if you're trying to describe a color to a person who is physically blind. They just don't get it. It doesn't make sense. And how people operate socially, how they function socially, how they fight with each other, we don't get that. It's not part of who we are. All right, so what do we do with this? Well, having understood that we're mind blind, we need a little bit of guidance, and to that end, I've got 4 principles for you, and number 1 is what I call the jerk principle. And it works like this. Supposing that you're going to get married, and you found the perfect person, which no, you didn't because there are no perfect people, but this is as good as it's going to get as far as you're concerned, and this person may as well be perfect, right? So you go to the altar, you say, I do, or I will, or whatever the preacher tells you to say, and from that point forward, what happens? Well, hopefully it's, how does the fairy tale go? And they lived happily ever after. But does that actually happen? Well, sometimes it does. Believe it or not, there are people who get married and they live happily ever after. Not perfect, but happily ever after. We've been married almost 46 years. It'll soon be 50 years that we've been married, and I can't remember. I'm thinking, trying to make sure that I'm not missing something, but I don't remember ever having an argument, let alone having a fight. How do we do that? Well, the jerk principle works like this. Number 1, there's 2 parts to it. Number 1 is don't marry a jerk. And part number 2 is don't be a jerk. So if you don't marry a jerk and you're not a jerk, then okay, you can come up with other words other than jerk, right? But I try to keep it family friendly. But just don't be a jerk and don't marry a jerk. And if you can get those 2 things right, pretty much everything else falls in line. Yeah, I know there are other things that happen, like you may have some crusty family members or in-laws or whatever that may make a mess out of things, or at least try to make a mess out of things. But still, the core principle is if you marry the right person, and that right person marries the right person who is you, 99.99999% of it is taken care of. That's marriage. What about other personal relationships like a business partnership? Well, first of all, this is my personal relationship, or my personal opinion rather. I would never get involved in a business partnership of any kind. Just don't do it, because there's always that risk of infighting between the 2 of you. Now, sometimes it works out well, but it's got a success rate that I would say is has a higher failure rate, I should say, than even marriage. So I have no interest in being in a business partnership with anybody. I've owned a business for years and no partnership. Didn't need a partner. If I don't know how to do it myself, why am I bothering to do it? If I need help, I'll ask for it from somebody else, but they don't get to be a partner. Or I could hire a lawyer, whatever. But the jerk principle applies, it seems, across the board, and it could be a marriage, could be a business relationship, could be just a friendship. If you want to have a good friendship, choose friends who aren't jerks. How do you know who is and who isn't a jerk? Well, the person who acts like a jerk, that's a jerk. The person who doesn't act like a jerk might still be a jerk, so you're going to have to give them some time and find out. But that's how that works. Principle number 1 is the jerk principle. One more time, the other person can't be a jerk, and you can't be a jerk, and it works. Usually. Number 2 is this. This is what I call the empathy principle. And I've often wondered this. Why is it that we tend to hate people with whom we disagree? You ever notice that? Disagree with somebody. It could be political, it could be social, it could be religion, could be sports, but you disagree with this person, and so you hate that person because they have a different viewpoint. How stupid is that? I mean, how absolutely positively dumb is that? But everybody does it. We literally fight wars, and we always have. We being humanity, we fight wars over the color of the Easter Bunny. So you have one group of people and they believe the Easter Bunny is pink, and you have another group of people who believe the Easter Bunny is blue. And the blue bunnies and the pink bunnies consider each other heretics, and so they fight over it. Why do we do that? I mean, we do it, right? Well, it's just part of human nature. We divide ourselves between us and them. So we don't get along because we don't apply the empathy principle. So the empathy principle works like this. It's giving the other person room, and this works in a family situation, works in a business situation, works in a workplace, neighborhood, whatever, but allow the other person to be different. Allow the other person to think different. Allow the other person room to have different opinions that are contrary, not just different, but are contrary to your own. Now, if you are in a family situation, it's perfectly okay for your spouse to have a political opinion that is different from yours. It's perfectly okay. The fact that you don't like it or you disagree is no cause to go to war with your spouse. They could have a different religious opinion. They could have all kinds of different opinions than you. Why not? Why does everyone have to be a clone of me? Why does everyone have to agree exactly with the way that I believe? And if not, I hate you. Now, you got to keep in mind that there was a time in European history when people were burned at the stake. Literally, take them out, burn them at the stake because they didn't agree with someone else. So there are thousands of examples. But one guy, he didn't believe in the I think his name was Severitus. I can't remember his name. I'll have to look it up. But he did not believe in the Trinity, and we typically don't talk about religion on my channel, but he didn't believe in the Trinity, and he didn't believe in child baptism. And those were both offenses. Those were heresies. And they were both punishable by death. And so they took the guy out, and they tied him up, and they burned him at the stake. Because he didn't believe in infant baptism, because he didn't believe in the Trinity. Why can't we give people space to disagree with us? Say, okay, well, whatever. Well, apply that to your family relationship. It's okay. Once again, I already said this, but it's okay for your spouse to disagree with you politically, religiously, ideologically, or what you're having for dinner. It's perfectly okay. So if you're having trouble with personal relationships, usually it's one or two reasons. It's because your spouse is being a jerk, or it's because you're being a jerk. And being a jerk means I'm not going to give any room for empathy. You cannot be different from me. You have to agree with me 100% of the time, all the time. Number 3 is nature's complementarian principle. So in marriage, we think of this as gender roles. The way that I like to phrase it in practical terms is aces in their places. I don't know who originated that phrase, but it works very well. Aces in their places. What are you good at? What I am good at is mowing the grass, so I mow the grass. My wife can mow the grass too if she wants. I'm not going to stop her if she feels like it. Yeah, go ahead, power up the lawnmower and have at it. But my wife does like to do yard work, and I'm not going to say, hey, that's my domain, stay out of the yard. No, if she wants to do yard work, she can. She wants to plant flowers or whatever. If she wants to, well, that's pretty much what she does. She plants flowers. But if she wants to have a garden, maybe grow some vegetables in the spring and hopefully harvest them in the fall. She wants to take care of all that. I'm not going to say, hey, get out of my yard, Now, if she does that in the garage, I might say, hey, get out of the garage, because that's my domain. And please do not clean the garage. That is my domain. But my wife also has her domains, things that she is good at. And those are the things that she does. I'm pretty good at straightening up around the house, but she's good at cleaning the house. If it were up to me, the house would be covered with dust, because if it gets too dusty, I'll get out the leaf blower and nail everything down first, and their dust is gone. Okay, it's not gone, but for the second, it's gone. My wife likes it a little bit tighter than that, so she'll go around, she'll even clean the floors. I mean, it's amazing. And she doesn't want any dirt on the floors whatsoever. Wants it perfect. Well, that's her domain. So the point is aces in their places. This is called nature's complementary principle. So if you are a person with Asperger syndrome, and you are married to a person who is neurotypical, chances are you're having some conflicts because you don't understand aces and their places. You don't understand nature's complementarian principle. That we have strengths and we have weaknesses, and when we come together, if we work on our strengths and let the other person work on their strengths and not tell them what to do all the time, and they don't tell us what to do all the time, typically that works. Yeah, there's always going to be some conflict. But that complementarian principle, well, to think of it, all of nature works on that principle. All of it. All of it. All of it. You know, well, think of a lion. Who does all the hunting? The female. She goes out and she kills the prey and drags it home for dinner. What does the male do? You know, the male is the one with all the hair. I have no idea. You know, they sit around and roar. You know, they start movies or something. I don't know what they do, but that's complementarian. And that's one example of millions. Throughout all of nature, you see the complementarian principle in work. And we think, well, we're going to change it because we got a better idea. Pretty sure, no, what you're doing is you're building yourself up to conflict. Number 4 is this, what I call the expectation principle. And the way that works is this. We have unrealistic expectations. And usually it begins, if we're going back talking about a marriage, it typically begins before the wedding day. And if you're talking about a business relationship, it usually begins before you sign the papers to form the corporation. So whatever it is, usually you have unrealistic expectations because you think this person that you are going to marry is just perfect. Now, what do we say about perfection? It doesn't exist. So this individual that you think has no flaws has flaws. And if you're not willing to acknowledge that, eventually you're going to be disappointed because you're going to be confronted with those flaws. But what if you start out at the very get-go and you acknowledge that I have flaws, she has flaws, or if you're a woman, you do it backwards. We understand that we have flaws. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with just admitting, this is a really cool person. I like this person. I want to marry this person. But I'm not going to idealize them beyond realistic expectation. So what happens is if you don't do that, you wind up being very, very, very disappointed. So those flaws will come out because they're going to show up. So what happens is sometimes we compare ourselves to each other, and that leads to distortions, and ultimately that leads to disappointment. So distortions ultimately lead to disappointments. So if you were thinking somebody should live up to your standards, whatever your standard is, but they're thinking you should live up to their standards, but it turns out you have different standards. One standard could be that you need to make your bed first thing in the morning, and the other standard would be why. We're just going to mess it up again, so why bother? Two different standards. Okay, whose standard wins? Now, personally, I'm all for the making the bed first thing in the morning. Okay, maybe give it an hour, but get it done so it's done and out of the way. Forget about it. But what happens? And some of the trivial things that people fight over. But if you are an Aspergian, just take that and amplify it 1,000 times. Because you have those expectations that maybe your neurotypical wife, or I say wife because most Aspergians are male, but it could be the other way around. It could be the woman has Asperger's and the husband does not. But they have expectations of you. For example, they may expect that you are going to be a great conversationalist. Oh, they're in for a disappointment. I mean, seriously. People with Asperger syndrome typically don't like to talk to anybody, even a spouse. It's very challenging. It's sometimes very difficult for us to have a conversation. We've got to work at it, right? Got to work at it. I said in another video that if I hear a noise and it's my wife's voice, and if she's not on the phone, and if there's no one else in the house, I just put all that together and I assume she's talking to me. And if she's talking to me, that means that she has a thought she wants to get from her head to my head. So that means that I have to go listen to her. And so I do. And I just stand there till the noise stops. And I try to understand and grasp what it is she's saying. And so the thought goes from her brain to my brain. So now that may not be how neurotypical people do it, but I don't know how they do it because I'm mind blind. But what I do understand is this: I don't have conversations like other people do, including conversations with my wife. People think that's weird, but hey, we get along. Because I think we allow, again, that takes us back to the empathy principle, that we allow the other person to be the other person. If you are married to somebody with a problem with a temper, I don't know what to tell you. Well, yeah, I do know what to tell you. You need to go, in my opinion, you need to go talk to a counselor. You need to talk to a therapist and get that problem worked out. So here's how this works sometimes. We compare ourselves to others, and that leads, as we said, to distortions, and it leads to disappointment. So first of all, we could think you are less than others, and consequently you feel cheated, or you may feel that you are better than others, and so you feel superior. But what would happen if we just feel like that we're not better, we're not lesser, we're just part of the team? The world doesn't revolve around us, nor do we revolve around the world. Neither one of them. We're just part of it. We're part of the family. We're part of the team at work. Wherever we go, wherever we have relationships with other people, we're part of it. Sometimes they don't see it that way. Sometimes they, if you're working with a narcissist, you're going to have some serious problems, right? But it's how the world works. So we need to have this expectation principle of being realistic in our expectations, that it is not going to be a flawless relationship of any kind. There will be difficulties, there will be challenges, and sometimes they are insurmountable. Usually, my experience, they're not. Sometimes you can't go over them, so you have to go around them. But typically, most everything can be worked out. See those two rectangles on the screen? If you like what you heard, just click on one of those two rectangles and the conversation continues. But if not, thanks for stopping by, and we will see you all next time.